Hi there, I'm Allison Hans and welcome to the Working Woman Report. One of today's guests is a renowned author whose works on time management have appeared in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Fortune magazine. Laura Vanderkam's expertise has also led to numerous appearances on TV and radio, including The Today Show and Fox and Friends. Her 4 books have made her an authority on time management. However, it was one book in particular, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, that shot her to new heights of popularity. In the book, Laura explores how many successful people use the mornings to accomplish things that seem impossible to do later in the day. She says that by taking control of their schedules, these early birds tend to live happier and more productive lives. So how did she come to this conclusion? I sat down with her to find out.
I'm a journalist, and I have spent a lot of time profiling people who do interesting things with their lives. And I had noticed that whenever you had people who were doing amazing things in their professional lives and also doing amazing things in their personal lives, they were quite likely to be using that time in the morning for something that was important to them. So I write about time management and productivity and have written a number of books on that. And as I was interviewing people for that and asked them about their strategies, this one kept coming up over and over again. So I realized there had to be something there. And I've been very inspired by looking at people's morning routines. I can't say that I have a great morning routine myself, but maybe someday I'll get there.
Well, tell me about your book, What Successful Women Do Before Breakfast, okay? I mean, all I can do is get a cup of coffee.
Yes,
That's it.
I'm often just doing that myself if we're lucky. But when I wrote What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, I looked at high-performing people who also seem to do amazing things in their personal lives too. I mean, you look at somebody who's like leading a company and then finding time to run marathons, or entrepreneur who also writes a novel on the side. You're like, where do they find the time? And the answer is often first thing in the morning. Mornings are a great time for getting stuff done. It is time that you can have for yourself and your own personal pursuits before everyone else wants a piece of you, whether that's at work or at home. So I'd find people would get up, do what was important to them, then go about the rest of their days knowing it had happened.
What is it about the morning that makes people more productive?
Well, many of us tend to have more focus and discipline in the morning. The example I always use is that diets aren't broken with a spoon going straight into the Haagen-Dazs at 7 a.m. Like, that's really more of a 10 p.m. kind of activity.
That is such a great point.
It is. And so in the morning, you have the discipline and focus to do something that would be harder to do at the end of the day. If you think about the end of the day, you're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll write that novel at night. I can give you the answer right now. You will not write that novel at night. You will be tired. The TV will be very attractive. You'll be scrolling through social media. But in the morning, we can get up and get things done. So it makes it a very good time for things that the late Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People would have called important but not urgent. Things that don't have to happen, but things that you want to have happen.
So in your book, what are some examples of people that are hitting it out of the park with this strategy of mornings?
Well, I interviewed someone who's the former CEO of Pepsi, for instance, who had gotten up every morning around 5:30 and gone and run for 4 miles. And he did this every day. And obviously, as a busy executive managing a company that's all over the globe, every other minute of the day would be taken by something that he had to deal with. And yet this was time that fewer people needed him to do anything. He said, I do this first, then you have, your energy is there for the rest of the day. But I talked to all sorts of people who had different habits. I mean, people who got up and wrote first thing in the morning. I talked to one graduate student, for instance, who got up and wrote her thesis first thing in the morning. And the rest of the day, she's dealing with students who need stuff and running things in the lab. But in the morning, that was when the writing got done. Different people use it for spiritual pursuits, for instance. Getting up and meditating or praying is a great way to start the day in a more calm and focused space.
Now this sounds great. Wake up early, have more energy, be productive. Plus, we know successful people are already using these time management techniques to get the most out of their day. You would think everyone would be doing this, but waking up at 5 a.m., that's a tall order. Most of us are probably sound asleep or simply don't have the willpower to get up that early. So I asked Laura, does everyone have to wake up at the crack of dawn to be successful, or are there different times for waking up? So what constitutes morning? Because some people consider morning like 5 a.m. and some people consider morning like 8 a.m.
I'm more of the morning as 8 a.m. myself, but I'm always amazed by people who get up at 5 a.m. voluntarily. I'm only doing that when I'm trying to catch a plane. But it differs for different people. It's more that you are building something into the time before you go to work for something other than just getting ready for work. So if, for instance, you normally start work around 9, maybe getting up at 6:30 would give you an opportunity to spend an hour and a half on things that mattered to you before the getting ready process began. And I'd even studied some college students, for instance, who maybe start classes at 10 or 11, and the fact that they're not getting out of bed 5 minutes before class and rolling over to it, they get up and have time to study or exercise or even have relaxed breakfast with friends, allow them to have space for important things in life. And it didn't mean getting up at the crack of dawn. It's just a little bit earlier than you absolutely have to.
What makes Laura's time management techniques so effective is how easy they are to implement. She says being more productive only requires minor tweaks to your current routine, not a complete overhaul. Simply getting up a little bit earlier than usual can have huge benefits. It's just a matter of figuring out what works for you and sticking with it. Coming up next, Laura tells me the 3 easy ways you can instantly manage your time better, including one tip that you probably haven't done since you were a kid. Welcome back to the Working Woman Report. I'm Allison Hans. Today we're talking with Laura Vanderkamp, the influential author on time management, who discovered that most successful people are getting a lot done in the morning. Her book, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, studies different individuals from college students to former CEOs to find out exactly how they're being more productive in the morning. And apparently, getting up early in the morning isn't enough. So I asked Laura, what are some easy ways to boost productivity?
I think adults should try giving themselves a bedtime. And many of us maybe have a hang up from childhood that we hate the idea of having a bedtime and we want to rebel against this idea of going to bed at a certain time. So many adults will just sit there and keep watching TV because everything about TV keeps you wanting to watch the next thing, or else we're scrolling through social media, we're looking at photos from somebody we didn't even like in high school's vacation, and it's like, why are we spending our precious time doing this? Try setting a bedtime alarm, like half an hour before you need to get into bed, telling you it's time to wind down, shut that all off, get yourself nice and cozy, go hang out with your partner, whatever it is you do before bed, and get to bed by your bedtime. And then you can wake up at the time you wish to get up and have your wonderful, productive morning where you're not dragging because you didn't get to bed on time before.
And what about sleeping next to your phone? I think that is something that is becoming more common. And I heard someone recently say, put the phone in the living room.
You can certainly do that. It's not the phone itself that is the problem. It's what's coming into the phone, I think. I mean, you can use your phone as a clock and you can use it as an alarm clock. I put my phone in airplane mode overnight just so I'm not getting anything coming in because that's what's distracting to me. The fact that it's there being used as a clock is not in and of itself distracting. But if you do find that you can't resist the temptation, then yes, go put it in the living room and get yourself a nice, dumb, old-fashioned alarm clock. Put it on the other side of the room so you have to get out of bed to go get it. And once you're out of bed, usually it's pretty much okay to stay out of bed.
There is research to support the idea that not looking at your phone before bed and getting to sleep on time is good for you. According to a 2014 study by Brigham and Women's Hospital, looking at a screen before bed can be detrimental. In the study, one group of people looked at an iPad before bed. The other group read a book. The results were decisive. The group that looked at the iPads took longer to fall asleep, felt less sleepy at night, and had shorter REM sleep. Those results can have real-world consequences too. Not only did the test group with the iPads sleep worse, but the next day they weren't as alert as the readers and demonstrated poorer decision-making skills throughout the day. Laura's advice of giving yourself a bedtime and to avoid looking at your phone before sleep can help overcome these problems. But her best tip is still to come. As women, so many of us are struggling with time management. What are some of your suggestions to make it doable, easier?
If you want to spend your time better, I think the best thing you can do is figure out how you are spending it now. Many of us have ideas of where the time goes, but these are often based on stories we're telling ourselves, and if we examine those stories, they may not be entirely true. So I always tell people, try keeping track of your time for a week. It doesn't have to be minute by minute, but maybe every half hour, every hour. What are you doing with yourself? Every couple of hours, write it down, and then look over and say, well, how many hours am I working? How many hours am I sleeping? How many hours am I spending in the car or dealing with my kids or exercising or volunteering or watching TV or whatever else it is you do with your life? And then look at those numbers and say, well, does that reflect what I would like to be doing? And if not, is there something I can change? I mean, maybe there isn't, but I think for most people, there's at least one or two things we can tweak on the margins.
Are there any other tips on time management that people can take?
Broadly, I think people should ask what they want to spend more time doing. We often focus on the things we want to spend less time doing, which makes sense because they're usually no fun. We want to spend less time on email, less time on housekeeping, less time on all these things. And that's great, but when you fill your life with things that are important and meaningful, the other stuff naturally takes less time. If you're going out for a wonderful dinner with friends, like maybe you won't spend time housekeeping that night, but that's probably okay. I mean, the toys will just come out the next morning again anyway, but now you've had this wonderful evening with friends to celebrate instead.
So let's review. First, give yourself a bedtime. This allows you to maximize your sleep. Second, don't look at your phone or other screens before bed. Screens will keep you awake and make getting to sleep afterwards more difficult. If you need to put your screen in another room, go ahead and do that. And third, track your time management. Find out how you are spending your time and what you can change in order to do the things that you want. What is the message that you hope to impart to women?
Well, broadly, looking at how people spend their time, I want women to know that the time is there for the things that matter to them. We often have this story that I have no time, my life is crazy, my life is busy, there is no time for anything I want to do. But that's a story we're telling ourselves. And if you change that story, if you say, I have time for the things that matter to me, time is a choice. When I say I don't have time for something, that really means it's not a priority to me right now. And that could be totally true. It's fine if it's not a priority to you right now. But if you own that truth, then it puts you back in charge of your time and allows you to make better choices on how you spend it.
So often we find ourselves struggling to make it all work. Laura says that through time management, people can take back control of their lives. She says things that might seem impossible, like running marathons or writing books, suddenly are possible when they're made priorities. It's just a matter of taking time to figure out what really matters to you. Up next, it's one thing to take control of your personal life, it's another to do it in the workplace. Meet an attorney who is empowering women in more ways than one. Welcome back to the Working Woman Report. I'm Allison Hans. Our next guest is a partner at Morgan Lewis, the largest law firm in the world led by women. Attorney Jami is a longtime advocate of diversity in the legal industry. In her time at Morgan Lewis, she's launched ML Women, a diversity and inclusion program for women, and she's been named Attorney of the Year by the Legal Intelligencer. Away from work, she's a frequent speaker and is active in various community service organizations such as United Way. Now, before the break, we spoke with Laura Vanderkam about maximizing work-life balance through time management techniques. Jami is also helping women strike a balance between work and their personal lives. Her way of doing so? Paid leave. According to data compiled by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the United States is the only country among 41 nations that does not mandate any paid leave for new parents. Most countries offer new parents 4 to 12 months of paid leave to take care of newborn children. Some countries, such as Estonia, provide more than a year and a half of paid leave. In the United States, though, there is 0 guaranteed weeks of paid leave. Jami is trying to change that.
Well, I think childcare is something that all working people experience as an issue, but the fact of the matter is that even with having more women in the workforce, the statistics just are that that responsibility falls more on women. So it's more often than not the working mother who is struggling to make that child care work. It's also expensive to make child care work. You want to have high quality child care for your children. I think sometimes people feel that they're working just to pay for their child care. And then I think the thing that is really big for working women everywhere is there is still a stigma, if you will, for working moms. When you go to a school concert, if the dad isn't there, nobody notices. Everybody figures he's on a business trip, he's doing what dad should do. If the mom isn't there, it's a little, gee, what's going on in that family? And I think I spoke with Nina Tassler this morning. I had a great fireside chat with her about her new book. And we were talking about an experience she had one time when she took her 8-year-old son to somebody's house for a birthday party, only to find out it had been the day before. And one of the things we really talked about is if a dad had done that, people would laugh at it, make fun of it, maybe feel sorry for him. But if a mom does that, she's devastated, and everybody else is like, well, you know, she's really not paying enough attention at home. And I think that internal feeling and tension for women really makes it hard to have a demanding job.
How do you change that narrative so that men are more responsible for the caregiving and it isn't all focused on women?
Well, I think there's some things you can do and some things you probably can't. The things you can do, and we do at Morgan Lewis, and a lot of companies now do, is we have child care leave, not just maternity leave, child care leave. So we have a lot of men who take time off to help care for children so that women aren't put in that position of either, you know, having to go back to work too soon or juggle it all themselves. So that's one thing you can do. I think in society now we accept just more often. It's fine for a man to say, oh, I got to run out to go pick up the kids. So I think there's a social change. I think the thing we really can't change easily is that internal feeling, the socialization issue. The one thing I will say that I think women can do is we're very demanding of ourselves, but we are hard on each other as well. And I think one thing we can do to change that is just to kind of help boost other people up when they're going through that period and give them a little bit of a break, but also remind them that your career is a long time and these bumps you have are going to be short in duration, and if we can just get you the support to spell that period, you know, get over that hump, I think that you can have a very rewarding career and do the things you want to do at home. Maybe not perfectly, but well. And I think that's the challenge, is as much that internal psychological feeling and the expectations women put on themselves to be perfect at all things.
Jami's investment in women is why Morgan Lewis is consistently rated as one of the best places to work in the country. She provides women with the support systems they need to overcome certain obstacles, such as finding proper child care. Not only that, but she champions diversity and the unique skill sets that women bring to the table. Where does this desire for acceptance, this perfectionism come from? Is it ingrained in childhood?
I'm sure it is. You know, I think there are people who would say there's biological aspects. I think most people think it's probably societal. We're all such products of our upbringing, good and bad. I mean, I think there are a lot of things that women do really well and that women bring to the table. There's reasons why science is now showing, studies are now showing, that if you have a third of the women on your board, or at least 3 women on your board, the company tends to perform better. Women bring a different perspective. Their skill sets are different. Whether that comes from genetics, biology, socialization, you know, I don't really know. But I think we bring a lot of assets to the table. But if we're too shy about expressing them, if we're too worried about being liked, not that you want to be disliked, but all you want to be is respected, right? I think that's, it's really important for women just to understand that we have a full suite of things to bring to the table, but if we don't say what we're thinking, and if we don't bring those ideas forward, and if we're not willing to take a risk and stand up and say what we think, then your voice doesn't count as much because nobody really knows what's going on inside your head.
Make your voice heard. That's Jami's take-home message. Regardless of whether or not the message is accepted, is not as important as speaking up. So if more women speak up, will we see more women in leadership positions?
Well, it's very interesting because since the time I got out of law school 36 years ago now, women have really comprised half of the people coming into the legal profession. But what's happened is that the higher up in the profession you get, the lower that percentage goes. So you've got half the women coming in, and I think women of my generation sort of thought, okay, well in 10 years we'll be half the leaders of the firm. The fact of the matter is there's a handful, and I really mean a handful, of women at the top of large law firms. So we're just not progressing into those leadership roles consistent with the way we're starting in the profession.
Why do you think that's the case?
I wish I could give you the answer. I get asked that a lot. I think about it a lot. I think it's a variety of factors, some of which are probably within the control of law firms, some not as much. On the positive side, as companies have grown, they have developed large in-house legal teams, large in-house compliance teams. It's become more common for women to go in-house, and some of those jobs are more flexible. You're not on demand sort of 24/7, although they work very hard. So we're competing actually with our own clients for women. But I don't think that answers it the whole way. I think the fact of the matter is still that in a very demanding job, a lot of times you have women who are taking some time off to have children, who want to try to find a way to make family and work together, and the profession just hasn't done a great job so far of making that work. It's doable. I have 4 children, but it's not as easy as maybe we could make it.
So can companies make it easier? With women like Jami leading the way and women like Laura helping us craft schedules that work for our lives, let's hope so. For more information on the women you saw here today, or more information in general on work-life balance and time management, simply head to our website, workingwomanreport.com. Also, don't forget to connect with us in the social media world via Facebook and Twitter. That's all for this edition of the Working Woman Report. Join us next time for more inspiring stories about our fantastic women. Who knows? Maybe you're next. See you then.